Welcome back to the Corpseroad. During our last walk along this highway composed of blackened skulls and haunting mist, I told a tale of vengeance from Japan. You remember, don't you? It was the one where the guy wanted to bang the other guy in the butt with yam lube, but that guy wasn't down with it, so the yam guy murdered him and was later killed by the younger brother of the guy that was murdered. Granted, there was more to that story, but I like to take off the rose-tinted sunglasses of history and get down to what it often is, an epic set of consequences occurring because someone was a dumbass. That leads us to the most fantastic tale of Adauchi from Japan's history, the Ako Vendetta, also known as the Revenge of the 47 Ronin. In 1701, Japan was under the rule of the Tokugawa shogunate, with Tokugawa Tsunayoshi being the shogun at that time. Yes, there was an emperor, Higashiyama, but he ruled in name only, as no one gives a fuck about a guy that's not big dick enough to control the country's army. Underneath the shogun were the lords of the land, the daimyo. They ran the various provinces of Japan, sometimes from their homes and sometimes from Edo via their retainers, when the shogun had them housed there at certain times of the year. Our story begins with a particular daimyo, Asano Naganori, of Ako, being summoned to Edo Castle to help arrange a reception for the imperial family on the orders of Tokugawa. In popular retellings of this story, Asano is portrayed as a nobleman who, while ruling a province that many in Edo would consider a backwater on par with Alabama in the United States, is an old-school samurai ill-equipped to deal with the corruption and two-faced behavior of the Edo courts. While I'd love to pretend that Asano was the Ned Stark of his time, a report commissioned to the shogun about him before the events of the Ako incident is not very flattering. Becoming a daimyo at age 8, he's described as intelligent, but lacking military or literary skills. Apparently the guy preferred pleasure over running his province properly, probably letting his top retainers handle the governance of Ako, and spent a lot of his time trying to get his dick wet. If a samurai under Asano wanted to raise his chances of promotion, being a great warrior, especially in a time of peace, wasn't a primary requirement. All you had to do was kiss his ass and find him some hot big-titty bitches for the weekly sashimi and chill poker night at the local strip club. When the shogun, a guy surrounded by sycophants, thinks you have too many ass-kissers in high positions at your court, you have a problem. Due to the lack of a father and retainers that did not do their due diligence in trying to raise Asano adequately and put his goofy ass in check occasionally, I can assume he was probably quite quick-tempered, egotistical, and stubborn. Of course, that would be fine if he's only shitting on some plebe in his own province, but that attitude would not pass in the Edo court or with the alleged villain of the incident, Kira Yoshihisa. If Asano is assumed to be the Ned Stark of the story, Kira would be considered the equivalent of Littlefinger. He's often depicted as being a greedy bureaucrat, scamming money off daimyo via bribes for his services and living a lifestyle full of debauchery. I won't say that Kira wouldn't have had spinning rims installed on his horse if he could have in those days. The man wasn't daimyo rich, but he was paid well and had high standing in the shogun's court. I'm sure he enjoyed the indulgences of his time and place, but Kira came from a family that rose through the ranks by marrying the right people and fighting in the battles that mattered on the side of the people that currently ruled. They weren't just given status by being rich pricks. From what I've read, Kira Yoshihisa, age 60 in 1701, had served many shoguns as a master of court ceremonial and was considered a man who knew his shit and knew it well. Unfortunately for him, he was tasked with teaching Asano court etiquette and how to not look like a fucking moron when the emperor was due to arrive in Edo. It's said that it was expected of the daimyo to slide Kira some extra unique gifts under the table, grease his palms, if you will, for his services. In the story it's said that Asano chafed at this and refused to bribe Kira into doing the job he's supposed to do for free. Historically, however, there is no evidence of these underhanded actions. I believe Kira may have talked shit to Asano and called him a country dumbass a few times while trying to get him to pay attention in class and yelling at him to stop trying to fuck the janitor's wife. But we don't have evidence of that either. Given the incident to occur, it's obvious the two men weren't fond of each other. But the story makes Kira sound like the slimiest creep ever, while Asano is just some honorable samurai surrounded by government corruption, when in reality Asano was probably a twat, and Kira was just an old man that didn't want to deal with his bullshit. Now, Enough personality critique. Let's get to the bloodshed. On the 14th of April, 1701, the shogun arranged a farewell ceremony for the imperial family. Kira and a second daimyo, Date Munaharu, were assigned to act as hosts for the imperial party. An eyewitness, Kajiwara Yosobe Yoriteru, noted Kira coming from a room known as the White Chamber and started to walk toward him to speak with him. As they spoke, he saw Asano appear behind Kira and slash his back with his wakizashi, the short blade samurai carry and the only blade allowed in the palace. Asano exclaimed, "Have you forgotten my recent grievance?" Kira turned around, clearly wondering what the fuck was going on and why he'd just shit himself and was slashed again by Asano. At this point, Kajiwara got tired of watching Kira shit himself and tackled Asano, restraining him and taking his weapon. While defenders of Asano would say, well, Kira had it coming, it's all irrelevant as swords were not to be drawn in the palace. Assault of one of the shogun's top men definitely wouldn't fly with the shogun. Bloodshed during a ceremony with religious overtones was a big no-no, and most importantly of all, Asano just made the shogun look stupid as fuck, you goofy bastard. Asano knew all of this, by the way. He may have been ignorant of how to kiss ass in court, but he could not plead that same ignorance regarding the shogun's house rules. Also, his peers would later talk mad shit about his swordsmanship, saying he should have stabbed instead of slashed. And if he were a half-decent samurai, he'd have killed Kira instead of just giving him baby cuts that probably made him look prettier. Asano sucked. Accept it, Asano fanboys. By assaulting a courtier in the palace, seemingly unprovoked because we never learn what the grievance was, Asano ruined not only his life but the lives of his family, his estate, and all the people who served him. The shogun's rage is far-reaching. Within 6 hours, without investigating why Asano would have done what he did, Asano was ordered to commit ritual suicide or seppuku. If you don't know what seppuku is, I'll put it to you crudely. You stab yourself in the abdomen, drag that blade to the other side, and if you're lucky and the shogun permits it, someone cuts your head off. If not, you either wait to bleed out or stab yourself in the throat, or face to end yourself faster. At the time, this was seen as an honorable way to die, so at least Asano got to go out like a samurai and not a common criminal. His death poem is as follows.
I'll take it from here, sir. More than the cherry blossoms, inviting a wind to blow them away. I'm wondering what to do with the remaining springtime. I can tell you right now, you could have wrote a better goddamn death poem. This one's fucking trash!
Unfortunately, his lands were to be confiscated, his family was fucked over, and pretty much made commoners overnight, and his 270 samurai were out of a job, becoming Ronin. All because Asano was a butthurt bitch that couldn't control his temper. Back in Ako, messengers from Edo informed Asano's top retainer, Oishi Kuranosuke Yoshio, about the incident, and that his Capital One account would soon get pretty empty. Obviously distraught over the loss of their leader, many of the men wanted revenge. Revenge for what, you say? Asano was the one that assaulted Kira. Kira didn't do anything. If anything, you'd think they'd try to kill the shogun since he's the man that signed the death warrant. But let's be honest, that wasn't going to happen. Besides, the way the Asano's men saw it, Asano wouldn't have taken such drastic action without cause. So they figured they should go finish the action their master started. Oishi, fortunately, was not a moron. He knew Kira would have his guard up and his men on high alert. Also, he was more concerned about the overall family's safety and attempted to restore their positions. Unfortunately, Asano's heir, his brother Asano Nagahiro, was placed on house arrest, and his status was removed. Most of the letters Oishi sent to have him freed and the Asano family's status restored received a reply of, "Lol, get fucked, noob." The men considered barricading the castle and having a battle with the shogun's men, but figured that would hurt the family's chances of getting the castle back later on down the line. That, and they'd probably get their asses kicked. One guy said they should protest via mass suicide, but many of them thought that was fucking retarded, so they decided against that too. So for about a year or so, they just kept pleading their case with the shogunate and being good boys with the legal system. But when Nagahiro was released from jail a year later and still not restored to the daimyo of Ako, Oishi said, "Fuck it, Murder is back on the menu, boys, and started preparing for some old-fashioned samurai vengeance against Kira. Of the 270 samurai of Akko, only about 47 were zealous enough to seek revenge for Asano. The others probably thought as I do. Asano was a goofy fuck who ruined us all, and I'm just going to go get a new job or start robbing fools. See ya. The 47 slowly made their way to Edo separately to avoid suspicion, as Kira had spies watching them. They took on odd jobs, became teachers, and one even married the daughter of the architect who built Kira's mansion. Knowing he had to get the spies to believe he wasn't about that samurai life anymore, Oishi divorced his wife, left his family, and started drinking and hanging out in brothels. His behavior was so degenerate that a Satsuma samurai saw him wallowing in the mud and was so disgusted by his fall from grace that he kicked and spat on him. Eventually the spies were convinced Asano's Ronin were not a threat, and Kira reduced the guard around his mansion. Upon hearing this, Oishi sent word to the other Ronin, and the attack on the mansion was planned out. The Ronin that married the architect's daughter could gain access to the maps of Kira's estate, and the group was split into two teams, one to attack the front and the rear. On the snowy night of the 31st of January 1703, the attack commenced. Dressed similarly to ninjas with various pieces of homemade armor, a few men scaled the walls to open the gates, only to find the household guard sleeping. Other men were placed along the rooftop armed with bows to shoot anyone attempting to go for help. They even went around to the other households in the area, telling them they were there only to avenge their master, and that no harm would come to them. The neighbors did not interfere. Maybe they didn't like Kira, or stuck to the golden rule of not my business, not my problem. One Ronin, Terasaka, was allegedly sent away to inform the Asano family of what was about to go down. He would be the only one of the group to survive into old age, as he did not take part in the raid. An alternate theory is that he just turned chicken and ran, but I will stick with the former one. 46 Ronin prepared for combat. Once everyone was in position, Oishi sounded his drum, and the Ronin stormed the mansion. To their credit, Kira's retainers fought as best they could, considering they were caught sleeping and in their bedclothes. One of them, Shimizu Ichigaku, held off multiple Ronin barefoot in the snow before finally being cut down, realizing the fight was lost, and killing himself. It is easily forgotten that the men who died protecting Kira were not bad guys, but men trying to be dutiful samurai like the Ronin. Unfortunately for them, the Ronin was just better than they were. As a result, 17 of Kira's household were killed that night, with 28 wounded and a few escaping. Kira was eventually found hiding in a storage shed and brought before Oishi. It's said that they offered him the option of seppuku with the dagger Asano used to end his life. Kira, not being that hardcore, declined the offer. Oishi, at that point, promptly called him a fucking pussy, had him pinned down, and proceeded to cut off his head with the dagger. Their mission accomplished, the men marched with Kira's head to Sengakuji, where their master was buried. After cleaning the head and making it nice and shiny, they placed it before his grave and stated,
"We who have eaten of your food could not without blushing repeat the verse, 'Thou shalt not live under the same heaven, nor tread the same earth with the enemy of your father or Lord. Nor could we have dared to leave hell and present ourselves before you in paradise, unless we had carried out the vengeance which you began.'"
The men showed their loyalty to their lord by finishing the act that he started by wounding Kira. Their action was entirely criminal under Japan's current vendetta system, as avenging a lord was not permitted, and it only really applied to direct family members and had to be approved before being carried out. See the previous Igago case we've discussed. But these men didn't care. They justified their action via an older standard of samurai honor from a bygone era. After showing their respects, they turned themselves into the shogun's custody for judgment, in which they expected only death. The shogun was at a loss in this case. On the one hand, they clearly broke the law by massacring Kira's household and ending Kira's life over revenge. But on the other, they were following the spirit of the samurai by avenging their lord, and the shogun appreciated the value of such loyalty. Also, The people of Edo admired the Ronin for acting like the samurai of old, and not just the bureaucrats they were becoming. However, he could not let them go and risk setting a precedent for more vendettas like this. The Ronin was sentenced to death. However, to honor them, they were permitted to commit seppuku. On the 20th of March 1703, the sentence was carried out, and all 46 Ronin committed seppuku. Terasaka, the Ronin that wasn't at the raid, was pardoned. The men, including Terasaka when he died years later, were buried in front of the tomb of their master. Opinions were mixed on the raid of the 47 Ronin. Their peers praised them for it, or called them cowards for waiting too long to avenge their lord. As I see it, Asano was a clown for doing what he did, and the shogun was far too heavy-handed in his judgment. If he'd given some way for the Asano family to regain their honor, this incident is unlikely to have occurred. Kira wasn't some evil mastermind corrupting Japan from behind a curtain. He was just a dude that got on the wrong side of another dude. As for the Ronin, they could have just moved on with life. Most of them did just that and didn't participate in the raid. But I can still understand the 47 who couldn't let sleeping dogs lie and felt they had to set a wrong right somehow. When you really look into the Ronin story, it's far more nuanced and complicated than what you'll see in theaters, and it takes a lot of the heroism out of the tale. I know that may be unpleasant to some of you, but this is the Corpseroad. Heroes are a luxury that is rarely found here. Our time together ends on that note. Until next time.